Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. It's been a while since I posted a video here, and I need to post things regularly. And I'm 2 videos up on my regular Pockets of the Future channel. And so, somebody suggested I post sports things here because I used to cover sports. You know, the died suddenly thing is sort of you tailored off. So, and I thought maybe that's a way to drive viewership, bring in new people. And what I want to talk today about is the Golden State Warriors after acquiring Jimmy Butler in a trade. And the reason why I'm posting this is that I've been listening to the pundits and the sports analysts talk about the ceiling of the Golden State Warriors because Draymond Green said things like they were going to win a championship this year and 3 out of the next 4. And that became a talking point because of the All-Star game sucking, which let me just mention this here. Everyone complained about the format of the All-Star game. And it's funny how, nobody saw it as a good thing. And I thought it was a great idea. What they did is they played up to 40, and they had 4 teams in sort of a tournament. And one of them was they had a tournament for the G League and the rising stars, young players who have potential. And one of the teams got to win that tournament and then play against the seasoned old-time players with Steph Curry and LeBron James and this kind of thing. LeBron didn't play, though, because he was a selfish piece of shit, right? He waited till the last minute to pull out of the game. He wanted to get acknowledged that he didn't want to break a streak of consecutive games, but there were other players who were deserving of playing the game, like this guy Norman Powell, who's been playing great for the Clippers, and that was his one chance maybe of being an all-star, and LeBron robbed it from him by not wanting to not be acknowledged as being in the all-star game, so he waited till the last hour and just showed up and sat on the bench and didn't play. Which is just really selfish, which we'll get into, because it's going to be a factor when I talk about the Warriors. But what I liked about the tournament, and the All-Star game is always kind of sucky, is that, when you play park ball, you play to a score. When you play like street ball, you go out to a park, you play a game to 12 or 11 or whatever it is, right? And I really like that better than the timed games. I really enjoyed that and how it transforms basketball. And, you'd have to win to stay on the court. So if there was lots of people, if there's a playground that was very, there was 3 or 4 teams waiting to play, then you would have to wait another hour to get back on the court if you lost. And so the games would be intense. And I really enjoyed it. And, I was in dunk contests. And I could dunk. And I could do probably about 6 or 7 different dunks, nothing like they do in the NBA dunk contest, but sometimes the rims were low too. There'd be you'd have these basketball courts where they would pave over an existing basketball court, and so there'd be an extra inch or 2 of cement. And there were just some courts you could jump better off of. But there was times where between games, people would just be dunking, people would be doing different dunks and things. And that kind of reminded me of the All-Star game, in terms of now they have the 3-point contest and the skills competition. But the problem with the dunk contest, like all sports, like gymnastics and things like that, it's judged by people, right? And I don't consider that a sport. If you're ice skating or gymnastics or any number of things where you have judges that are scoring the scoring what you're seeing, they try to make it more official and in ways that judges can be scrutinized. But the judge is always going to be prejudiced, and they're going to cheat. If you ever seen the movie about Tanya Harding, she was a thug, and not because of what she did to Nancy, whatever. That seems like a fake thing, because it seemed like she was fake crying. That I doubt that really happened. But anyway, Tanya Harding was just this thug. She was just sort of white trashy, but she was a great skater. I didn't realize that she was like the first person to do certain, lutzes or moves or whatever, certain spins, first woman to ever accomplish some of these things. But she was told by the judges she was never going to win because she like represented like sort of a low brow, low level human being. Not a. She wasn't going to be like even the way she skated, the kind of the brand, the face of the figure skating world, like some of these other more delicate figure skaters. So they were never going to let her win. Like he basically said to her, at least this in terms of the movie, which I totally believe because that's how it is, right? It's very cliquey and very there's a lot of politics, and so scoring to me, if you're going to score things, it's not a real sport. It's an exhibition because as much as sports are rigged anyway, right? And with the dunk contest, they have these celebrities or former players, and they have this problem where they don't want to give out tens even to great dunks because what do they give the next best dunk, right? Because if they give tens to a dunk and then there's a better dunk, then what do you give it after that, right? So it's always the scoring in the dunk contest is kind of silly. But they got this guy back McClung that does crazy dunks. Like he's probably the best dunker. He's like a 6-foot white guy that gets his head above the rim. And he does crazy dunks. Like he has hang time and things. And so that was kind of interesting to watch. And the game itself, because of the format, the players can play harder because they're not playing for like, a regular long game. And it was just a better way to do it, right? But everyone complained about it because once people complained, everyone had basically the same take. Like you listen to these sports guys, the pundits, and they're even worse than the political pundits. They just say the same things. Like once in a while, someone will have an outlandish take, and it's just to generate views. And there'll be people arguing with them because that's to generate views, right? The whole Simon Cowell thing that, American Idol, they used to fight on purpose. In these reality TV shows, there's drama. There's used to be a show on CNN called Counterpoint or something like that, Crossfire, something. And they would argue, like they'd have a liberal and a conservative arguing. And it was to generate, people like drama. But the majority of the takes in sports, someone will go on multiple shows and say the same thing. Like they'll have these, First Take and Get Up on ESPN, and they have Sports Center, and they have these other networks that have their sports show. And the person will go around, and sometimes they'll go and do an interview or do a podcast, and they'll say the same bullshit that everyone else is saying, and the same bullshit they said before. Like nobody thinks originally, which is, the same problem we have with the sheeple media, that people just don't have a way to assess things on their own. And oftentimes, they're not really they can't watch all the games because it's just, you can't, as someone who's covering sports, there's just too much content out there. And so they don't really know what's going on with specific teams. And of course, they can't acknowledge that sports is to some degree rigged. Like there's people who think that everything's scripted, and that's stupid. You can't script a good quality game. Like, you see when movies cover sports, it sucks. Like it's just too, it's just not, it's not believable. It's just, like the way that these games are played on movies and TV shows, and they're just too perfect, and like they're just not natural, and there's no flow to it. And you can tell the difference between something that's rigged and script, like a WWE that's scripted, and even WWE, there's some wiggle room. There's some, like they know what to do. Like they have these moves and flow to the match, but it's not like totally scripted. Like they, it's not like they're really competing, but they're like improvising to some extent, which it would have to be for something to look at least at all realistic. There has to be improvisation, right? So in the truth community, everyone thinks everything's scripted, and clearly it's not. But in real sports, in this, in the sports world, they can't talk about how, the NBA it's entertainment, and all sports are, and that they skew the system, they rig it. Various teams have an advantage. I mean, this whole trade with the Lakers is, like I've covered this on my other channel. it's clearly something else is going on there. They're making this controversial trade, getting rid of Luka Doncic. I mean, there's some kind of story there that's beyond. It's either the Lakers always just get great players, right? There's a whole thing, there's rigging of the sports, like as a way to keep the league relevant in these things. So, anyways, with that in mind, there was these series of trades, and I'm not really a fan of sports teams. Like there was teams I liked when I was a kid, and I still like them to whatever degree. But it's like a team that I root for based in watching them play and it being enjoyable for me. And I fast forward through commercials, and I can watch a basketball game in like an hour, depending on, and sometimes I'll fast forward through. It's just long games, and if it's a blowout, I'll fast forward till I see the other teams making a run, and then I'll go back a little bit and watch that. So I watch it a little differently, but it's I'm not. I mean, I know that it's rigged to whatever extent, and I don't care. Like I just enjoy watching these things, just from my youth of watching sports. But I am a fan of the Golden State Warriors because of the way they play basketball. Steph Curry is just enjoyable to watch, and the way that I used to like to play basketball, they play a very efficient game, even though they turn the ball over a lot. They have a flow to their offense, and it's interesting to watch, right? So I've watched them for a number of years, and I more recently got this package where I could watch the games, right? And so it's I get to see all the Golden State Warriors games, and I tape the thing so I can fast forward through whatever it is. But I have more knowledge than the average person because you can tell these guys aren't watching all of their games, and so what I saw with this team, well, there are these 4 trades that happened, these big trades. There was the Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic, which was this cosmic event that really undercut the Super Bowl week, and it was like a big thing, and they're still talking about it. And then there was the De'Aaron Fox trade to the San Antonio Spurs to team up with Wemby, who's going to be the next great player. And that shit the bed almost immediately because they lost a couple games. They had problems adjusting to the new lineup. And then Wemby got a blood clot, so their season's over. And so then there was the Jimmy Butler trade for Andrew Wiggins for the Golden State Warriors and the Miami Heat. And I like Jimmy Butler. I like the Miami Heat as well. The teams that I root for most are the Dallas Mavericks because of Kyrie Irving and his stance on the whole vaccination stuff that happened. And the way he just stood up was amazing. And he's just incredible, like the shots he makes and the stuff that he does. I've always, I'm a guard kind of, I would play guard and when I used to play basketball. So I appreciate guard play. And, the stuff that Steph Curry does and Kyrie Irving, dude, does. Like it just, when I played basketball, park ball, you would get like an like people, there's people sitting on the sidelines waiting to play. And someone would make a play, a dunk, or do something like fucking crazy good. And people, you could hear the reaction from the fans. Like, there'd be a gasp, And that's like the great part of sports, when something is done you haven't seen before. And I had that happen because I used to be able to dunk and I used to drive I was a good driver. I was, taking the ball to the hoop. And I made crazy shots and I had finger rolls and things I used to do. And, oftentimes I'd be the only white guy in the court in different places I played. So it was, unique to see a white guy dunking back then. So, I played a, kind of an interesting game. There's these people that play streetball, this guy, the professor, and some of these videos on YouTube where these guys are, they do extraordinary things like showing off kind of Harlem Globetrotter stuff. But basketball has, that and entertainment stuff in terms of athletic ability and skill level that has continuously grown over the years. And so Kyrie Irving and Steph Curry do those things. The shots that they make and some of the stuff they do is like crazy. So, I root for the Dallas Mavericks because of Kyrie Irving and what he did with the vaccination stuff. And, just also the skill level and the way they play. And the Miami Heat play like play a lot like the Warriors. And Jimmy Butler's just a clutch player. And he's funny and interesting. Like he does this stuff, and I'll post this as my the one image here, but Jimmy Butler shows up to media day and posts these trolling pictures, like he does this trolling stuff. And he was, funny and interesting. My wife and I watched the NBA show that covered 5 NBA players. And Jimmy Butler is really funny and interesting. Like he's just, he's kind of an asshole, but he's clutch. Like he plays big in playoff games. And the way the Miami Heat had these runs where they made it to the finals twice with the inferior teams and guys who were like players that they got out of the G League and, the players who weren't lottery picks. And so, I've been a fan of his. But the trade to me didn't make much sense for the Warriors because Andrew Wiggins is younger and on a less expensive contract. And the way that they've changed the structure of the financials, the cap space and the capping of salaries, it didn't make sense to get a guy that was going to be making $60 million to Jimmy Butler and lose a guy that's making like 20-something in Andrew Wiggins. And Andrew Wiggins is a really nice guy. And he's a guy who didn't want to get the vax either. But Andrew Wiggins is a great athlete and great defender. And it almost seems like a lateral trade. It didn't seem like they were getting much more with Jimmy Butler. It was just like, like similar players. I mean, they played on the same team. And, Jimmy Butler is sort of more of an asshole, and Andrew Wiggins is a nicer person. But Jimmy Butler gets hurt more. It almost seemed like a potentially bad move. And everyone was talking about these other moves, especially the Anthony Davis to the Dallas Mavericks and more Luka to the Los Angeles Lakers. And it didn't seem like a significant trade. The Golden State Warriors have been mired in the sort of play-in tournament level where they're not, even a playoff team. But once I saw the first game with him, and you could see the enthusiasm, you could see a different effect. And so this is the idea of, heart and drive and a person's personality. And, Jimmy Butler is not as good as an athlete probably as Andrew Wiggins and is older. But his, who he is as a person and a winner and like a leader. And it changed everything for the team. You could just see it. And it made total sense because, I could see it made sense to me that this was now a championship caliber team. Because watching their games, and like I said, I've pretty much watched everyone. I fast forward through things if it's a blowout. I fast forward to the end and I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time on something like that. But, in terms of the games that were close, which was most of their games, they were competitive with a lot of good teams. And they started off great in the beginning of the season. But they got a lot of guys who are either young guys who are good that are, they're learning and being, they're growing in their ability to be players and winners. And they had just Steph Curry as a sort of a, experienced closer and an A-list player. And, they would play close games, but like Steph Curry was either double teamed or, they would play, aggressive defense against him. And, he was tired out or whatever from trying to keep his team in the game or whatever it might be. And other guys just weren't stepping up and making clutch plays. And so they would lose these games, these close games. But if you bring in Jimmy Butler, who, he's a great addition because he affects winning in different ways. Like if you're looking at somebody being efficient and a winner, like he makes smart basketball plays and he doesn't need to dominate the ball. And neither does Steph Curry, which is a unique attribute in A-list players because Luka and LeBron James are ball-dominant players. And Luka can't even play without the ball. Like you watch Luka Doncic, who has got all this skill. He's got his scoring ability, shooting ability, and passing ability. And he's got, a high basketball IQ. He just understands the game. But the ball has to be in his hands. And LeBron James is the same way. And they're both kind of whiners and prima donnas, and they expect special treatment. I mean, that's part of the reason that the Dallas Mavericks got rid of him, at least in terms of the official story. And so that is a match that when you watch the games with the Lakers, they're trying to figure it out. And they got a third player in Austin Reeves who is a ball-dominant player. And so it's just like my turn, your turn, which is a big problem. And where the Golden State Warriors have a motion offense where everybody touches the ball, which is like good basketball because when you don't touch the ball, you end up not wanting to play defense. And if you see pickup games and these things, like you need to get everybody involved. But people just hold the ball and dribble and then go one-on-one and in isolation, and then maybe pass the ball to somebody who has to shoot an open shot. And they're sitting there in the corner waiting for the ball to come to them. And so, that's going to be a hard thing to work. Of course, the Lakers are going to give special treatment and privilege, and these are great players, and so whatever. We'll see how that all plays out. But right now, it doesn't look great, and you can see that they're having issues because there's 24 seconds, where, if you're dribbling for 8 seconds, like the chance of the ball moving around and these things. And so, whatever. But the Lakers thing isn't a slam dunk. They just grabbed Luka Doncic because he was available, and they're having to figure out how that's going to work. Where Jimmy Butler and Stephen Curry have both said that they're perfect fits because they're opposite. And what Jimmy Butler brings to the Golden State Warriors, which, again, he's not all that much better than Andrew Wiggins as an athlete and a player, but as a person and as say having a lion in the locker room, the team has gotten all this more confidence. He's a great defensive player, and he works well with Draymond Green, comes up with a lot of steals, which are added buckets. And when you have all these close games, when games are decided by 5 points or less, Jimmy Butler brings, 5 points through defense, through passing, through high IQ play, through not turning the ball over, all these things that the Warriors suck at. The Warriors needed more defense. They needed more, he's a post-up player, and he gets fouled. And again, when these games are close, and if they're a legitimate game and they're not, rigged in some way, then the Golden State Warriors should win quite a number of these games that they lost before. Again, with injuries, this is a championship caliber team. Doesn't mean they're going to win a championship. But with injuries and, the way the league decides, the league decides who they want to advance just based in, narratives, and maybe they give precedence to some of these younger guys, these younger stars, whatever. But if, on an equal playing field, the Golden State Warriors have clutch guys who they now have 2 closers at the end of games. And Jimmy Butler getting fouled means so much because Steph Curry gets fouled a lot. And at the end of games, you see the other team holding him, grabbing him, and they can play aggressively because it's there's no foul in terms of the last 5 minutes of the game, before the last 2 minutes. And if the Golden State Warriors aren't in the bonus, which they almost never are, those are not free throws. And Steph Curry's automatic on the free throw line. He almost never misses. He's got the best free throw percentage of any player in history. He just doesn't go to the line a lot. But when they're playing aggressively with him and holding him, grabbing his shirt, and doing all the shit that they do to keep him from getting the ball, that becomes free throws. So that changes the whole outcome and complexity of the game. And so Jimmy Butler's ability to affect winning and bring confidence, and you hear the guys talking on the team, and they got this guy, Quinton Post, who's a 7-footer who can hit threes. All of a sudden they got this rookie that's doing that. And so when I've watched these games recently, it's like night and day. The way that they're playing, the body language, and all these things, it's the biggest change in the team, right? Whereas, these other teams are struggling to integrate these players. There's been this seamless fit. And these pundits are all saying, well, maybe they'll win one playoff series. And I'm like, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. If you watched the games and you'd watched before and after, you would see that the Golden State Warriors are like a transformed team. And the things that they needed to win all these close games, they now have. They're getting to the foul line, which is key. And Jimmy Butler is clutch in his way. He's like a clutch player, makes clutch shots and clutch plays, like smart plays, passes, and gets guys open. And he's fit in the team seamlessly because he doesn't need the ball. He doesn't need to score. He can affect winning in various ways. And Steph Curry is not a ball-dominant player. And his personality, Steph Curry, he doesn't have ego issues. Everybody that's come there, Kevin Durant, these other players, Steph Curry doesn't give a shit. He's he doesn't have to be the ego guy, right? Like which is a big problem because LeBron James has to be that guy, and so does Luka Doncic. So that's like an issue there. Like they have to be the guy, they're in the locker room and dominating and just kind of like King James, right? They call him a king, and you have all these players in the NBA that are like that, big egos or whatever. And so it's the case where I've heard all these guys talk about it, and they're all saying the same thing. Well, maybe they'll win one playoff series, but they're not. If as this plays out the regular season, and as long as there's no injuries, the way they're playing now, they can beat anybody, and should beat the majority of teams, and could beat anybody in a playoff series, especially given that these teams that are above them are mostly young players and young teams who've never experienced winning. And so, it's you'll see, like, as let's say they win 10 straight games here, and they've won 4 out of 5, and the game they lost to the Dallas Mavericks was, they just missed shots they should have made, and they gave that game away. And, they buried the Sacramento Kings, who made a trade. And then they, with De'Aaron Fox, and they got a couple new guys. You can see they're struggling to integrate these new guys, and they got some new players even this year. And so they had played well. They had played close games in the last couple of years. So they're rivals, Sacramento and Golden State. They're California teams, and they just got buried by the Golden State Warriors at home last night. And you could see the difference in the team. Like it's night and day. And so they had a good team before that was struggling with winning, like winning close games, and they were competing. The games were they had more close games than every other team but the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? So there was all these things that they could have been different. Like they're right there. Those are teams that are right there. They just need a little, like, something extra. They just need a little, just a little jolt of something, right, to push them over the top. And, all these pundits don't watch everything. And so they just hear somebody say stuff, and they all say the same thing, right? There was when I went to college, I went to this, my third attempt at college when I finally got my bachelor's degree in human services. It was a college for adult people who had jobs. It was a weekend college, it was a whole different type of vibe there. And there was this woman who was, she worked in a prison. She was a prison guard. And she made a lot of money and bought a house in New York City. And she was telling me, like, the neighborhood was so, judgmental and, spying on each other. She said, like, if it snowed, you'd hear one shovel. Like, you'd hear one person outside shoveling. And within minutes, there was 20 people outside shoveling, like the sidewalks in like some, semi-suburban, urban neighborhood in, like, the Bronx or some, place in, like this place. The neighbors were just, everybody's like copies each other. You see this in cul-de-sacs, right, where everyone, in towns, and everyone behaves the same, and everyone's looking for, ways to conform. And, in the media, you see it in the mainstream media, and things that they're allowed to say or not allowed to say, and and in sports world it's even more, where everybody just regurgitates the same point of view. But like I said, when I first heard about this trade, I'm like, it just doesn't sound like it's going to do anything for the Golden State Warriors, but it's clear that it did. Like there's the actual, there's the idea of it, because you have all these people like to play, fantasy football, and these ways that people want to be managers and general managers, and they think that they could do a better job in evaluating talent. But, in this case, it was, and the guy who's the general manager for the Golden State Warriors is Mike Dunleavy. His dad used to be a coach and player for the Houston Rockets when I first started watching basketball. And he played with Jimmy Butler, and he knew the kind of winner that Jimmy Butler was. And so when they brought him in, like, they were kind of going against giving up assets, which they really didn't, and youthful talent. But the team is like reborn. And you just have to see them playing and realize, oh, fuck. Like, they are a championship level team. Like, they are, if they stay healthy, they're going to, possibly make a run at the championship. It's just anybody could see it, but they don't look like they just, it's, and they don't know shit. Like, these guys get paid to watch sports and talk about sports. and they absolutely suck at it. And it's not just this. There's things that I say to my wife when if we watch football or some of these things, and like kind of know what's going to happen ahead of time. I mean, if I was going to be a gambler, I'd have a good, probably record of doing it. Like I don't believe in gambling, and I'm not. But if you just see the way that the people talk, like you can see the body language and the way that the players talk about. You can see teams that have quit, and there's infighting, and there's things. You can just see teams that have it together, and they're capable of, they have the right attitude, and a lot of teams just don't want to win. There's a lot of owners that don't give a shit if their team wins or not. They're not even fans of the sport. They barely watch the games, right? They have no pride or no sense of, they're just there because they own a team. It's like a thing for them, right? Maybe it's a perk, they use it, these billionaires use it for whatever. But then there's ones that are dedicated to winning and will do whatever it takes to, get their team to win. And the Golden State Warriors have that ownership where they sold off a piece of their team to get more money to go over the luxury tax to keep their chances of winning championships alive. Like they're committed to winning. And so it's there's organizations. The Miami Heat is another one. They're committed to winning, right? They have a winning attitude. There's lots of ones that are like, it's okay. We make the playoffs. It's good. And I grew up in Hartford with the Hartford Whalers. It was like a miracle if they would make the hockey playoffs. There's no thought of them ever winning a championship. Like that wasn't a possibility. It was a small city. Hartford's one of the smallest cities. They're now the Carolina, whatever they are, hockey team. Or Tampa. They moved the team. Like they couldn't even keep the team for a number of years. But it was a big thing because in Hartford there was insurance capital of the country. There was nothing else going on. But you see this like with teams that have championship aspirations and players that are committed to win championships. Because there are lots of players, they just want to, make a lot of money. And, they try hard, but they're not, they don't want to sacrifice for that kind of thing. But you can see a difference if you just look at it, right? And, and I hear these guys talking, I'm like, you guys suck at your job, right? But anyways, we'll see how this thing plays out. I just thought I'd do a little bit of different video here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paravato, definitely important for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.